And hello, everybody. I'm Walter. I'm the Dutch mentor, and welcome back again to our S.M.A.R.T Performance Podcast, where S stands for self-care, M for mindful growth, A for adaptive learning, R for rhythmic operation, T for a thriving community, of course, P for performance. I'm so happy to have Becky with me today, and we're going to be focusing our conversation today around strategic thinking, strategic planning, but more importantly, how can we use AI not only in the planning cycle, but how can we execute upon that in 2026 as well? As always, if you'd like to learn more about this, you can find us in the Apple Store at thedutchmentor.com, all one word. Download the app, join, and make sure that you stay on the leading edge of your career in 2026. Becky, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. Well, my background has been primarily working on strategy in business situations, B2B primarily, with organizations that are trying to figure out how to grow. Maybe they stalled out, maybe they just didn't ever have a really good plan on how to grow their business. And then about 3 years ago, I started pulling in artificial intelligence. But I do have a little story if you want to know kind of where some of this comes from.
Sure. I
Okay,
love it.
well,
Yes, tell us a story.
Well, this is the story about why I care, really. And a number of years ago, I was visiting my grandmother, and I was coming back from visiting her, and I was driving on a gravel road, and it was like I heard the voice of God say, "You're going to have an accident." And within 5 minutes, my car started to swerve, fishtail on the gravel road. I went down the ditch, just bam, I crashed. I flew out the window. I woke up in a plowed field, and all I wanted to do was go to sleep. I don't know if anybody's had this experience. I just felt like, oh, I am so tired. And I knew if I shut my eyes, I probably wouldn't wake up again. So I pulled myself together, walked up the ditch, went over to a farmhouse where I knew the people, and was able to go in, and they kept watch over me until my mom and sister came to take me to the emergency room. And it was really after that that I started thinking that, we don't know when our time is up. And we really need to make every minute count is maybe a little extreme, but we want to make everything we do count and make a difference. And so that has stuck with me, that I want to do something that makes a difference. And in my world, where I can make a difference is helping business leaders be more successful, achieve their goals, get that joy back that maybe they've lost because they've been working too much and too hard. And so my real purpose and my mission is to work with businesses and help them figure out what they can do that's going to make a difference and do something that matters, because I want to do something that matters for them.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story. And it's, I can certainly, as a paramedic and flight paramedic, I've heard many of these stories over the years, experienced a few of them myself along the way. So it is important that, I always remind people there's one thing in life we don't get back, and that's time. So we better
Absolutely.
make something out of it, and we better connect the 4 Ps: purpose, passion, to the people and process that we want to work with. And there's no reason that you should go to work every day unhappy. So help me contrast a little bit. What is the old way of strategic planning, and what is the new way of strategic planning, integrating AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. And strategic planning has really evolved over the years. And my background is basically marketing strategy, growth, businesses, understanding the customer, the marketplace, all that kind of stuff. And now what I find fascinating is that has merged into what we used to call strategic planning, that has gotten way more hands-on and way more talking about the customer and the market and those kinds of things. And I kind of look at that and I go, oh, isn't that interesting? Now they're taking on what I always used to do. And what has happened with AI is, in some cases, people are using it just to use it, and they don't really use it very effectively, and they're doing all kinds of things. So when we work with businesses, we like to say, what are you trying to accomplish? What is your business goal? How can AI help you achieve that goal? And how can we make it a strategic tool instead of just a doing something tool? Because it's easy enough for any of us to get in and go, oh yeah, I'm doing AI. Well, are we doing anything that matters with it? Is it making a difference to our bottom line? And that's what we try to do, is really look at, all right, how is this going to affect the business? How much time is it going to save you? What's it free up your time so that you can do more challenging or more purposeful work?
Very good. So let's focus on the 6 Ps that I talk about in my Smart Performance app. It's always about safety, quality, growth, cost, transformation, and continuous improvement. So take one of the first couple of them, the safety, quality, growth. You picked the topic. Tell us, how would you look at that today from a different perspective, and what actions would you recommend somebody to take in order to become more effective at utilizing AI in the 2026?
Well, let's take growth, for example, because that's kind of where I've spent most of my time, is that, first of all, some of the things are still the principles that we've always known. You've got to have a plan, you've got to have clear objectives and a clear goal. Well, you can also use AI to help as a sounding board for some of the things that you're trying to do. And the other thing that I like to talk about is I'm just a real fiend on making sure you understand the customers. And I think there's nothing better than having an independent third party do the research and interview customers to find out what's working, what's not working, what do they like, what don't they like, what are their problems, what trends are they seeing. You just need to have good information. And you can use AI to go do your basic, I call it your secondary research. You can use AI to go come up with all kinds of information. And I say you still need to make sure that you have somebody actually talking to customers. So it's really a combination of two tools. The AI can give you great background and a great starting point. However, everybody's business is different. Everybody's customers are different. So you still need to do what we've done for years and get that firsthand information and interview customers or potential customers.
It's trust but verify, right? It is
Yeah,
that it
it's a
is.
good way to
I
look at it.
utilize, yeah, I utilize AI extensively myself, and I build an AI, mentor into it. So it almost sounds like me. People say
Right.
so, but the people still are using it on a too limited basis by just going to ChatGPT or Grok and asking a basic question. So, um, give us a couple of examples on how can I literally save time on my calendar, which creates opportunity, right? And in finance, we talk about this opportunity cost. It's like if time is of greatest value for me doing things that are below my license, and interesting enough, people who are doers, right, who go from a high technical skill position, they trust into management, they often keep doing, and they have little time to leading, or they might not even understand what leading is. But once they get to understanding, they have to do both, and that takes more than 40 hours a week. So how can people buy back some time utilizing some of these strategies you talk about?
Well, I'll tell you one story that I really, really love. This is a client of ours who's running a tech company. And we were chatting, and some of the things that we do with people, sometimes we just say, well, let's get a quick win. Let's do some low hanging fruit, because if somebody hasn't been using AI, a lot of times it's helpful just to take something that you know you can do. It might be simple, might not have huge impact, yet then they see the possibilities and their eyes are open and they're much more ready to just move into the tougher stuff or into something maybe more advanced. Well, this happens to be a client of ours, and we were talking about his sales process. He's good at selling. He just has a problem with getting all that information and closing the sale, and he's pretty good at closing, and taking it back to his team, because then he's got a whole laundry list of things that now the team has to do for that client. So we said to him, hey, how about you record your sales calls? Now you can do it if you're doing a Zoom meeting. There's a number of tools you can use for that, like Otter and Fathom and so on. And the other thing is, if you're meeting with somebody in person, use your phone. So he started, we showed him a bunch of things that he could do on his phone and everything. And so the next time I saw him was actually at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. I go, hey, how you coming on that? And he goes, oh, I got to show you. This is so exciting. So he pulls up his phone and he goes, look at this. I recorded this. And then I got it to make the action items, and I got it to make a summary, and I got it to get the high points. So now, instead of spending 3 hours briefing the team, I can do it in 30 minutes. And that saved him a ton of time, made it probably more accurate, because it was actual conversations that were recorded versus, you and I, if we're taking pen and paper notes, that gets something, but usually we miss a little bit. And so he was so excited about how much time he was saving just in one area of his sales calls. And hey, I think a lot of business leaders have some function on the sales role. And I would say for most of us, if we go, man, if I can cut my sales time down in half or cut out a third of it, that is a huge win.
It is. Thank you very much for sharing that story. So, Otter, Read, and a few other tools that we have had there. Certainly, I use it on most of my meetings. My clients ask for because it kind of summarizes, the 30-minute conversation I have with them on a weekly basis, and including it highlights the actionable steps that you need to take in order to continue to grow as individuals. So that's a great way to both organize yourself, remain focused, and cross-communicate if necessary. So build upon that. What would be the next thing that somebody could do to become more effective with their time?
Well, sometimes it's really simple things. And one thing that we find a lot of people is they get stalled out on content. Now, if you're in a small, even a medium-sized business, you feel like, oh, I got to put out stuff. I got to be on Facebook. I got to be on LinkedIn, whatever those different social media are that any organization wants. And what's interesting is one of our clients said the other day, he said, it's not so much getting the content done. It's all the time we spend thinking about doing the content, trying to get organized, trying to come up with ideas. It's all that planning time. And I thought, man, that just hits the nail on the head. So one of the things that I do, and I'll share a couple pointers here. One of the things that I do is if I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I got to send a follow-up thing, and you know how we can just ponder things ad nauseum. So now a lot of times when I'm on my exercise bike in the morning, I take my phone and I take ChatGPT and I say, hey, I'm going to do a follow-up letter, and here's what I want to say, and here's what the point I want to make. And, you just blabber on. And then I say, organize that for me. Well, then when I'm done on my exercise kick, I get to my computer and I pull that up, and by George, it's almost ready to go. I do a little tweaking and it's off my list. Well, back to the content story is what we did with one of our clients was he had tons of information, tons of knowledge, all that, but it was floating around. It wasn't organized. So we built him what's called a custom GPT. So we built him sort of his own version of AI within the AI infrastructure. And we put in industry information, we put in company information, we put in previous blogs, we put in previous videos, we put in all kinds of information so that it was now created to sound like him or his company, and it spoke in that voice. And now he can go to it, because usually he has ideas, but now he can go to it and he can say, hey, I want to do an article, a newsletter article on such and such and such and such, and it will at least create the first draft, and sometimes it can put it in pretty great form, and then it's just a matter of tweaking, and we can build it so that, and this is great if you can have this done, is you have it set up so it's customized for LinkedIn, and it can also then repurpose it or recreate it to hit the format for Facebook, for TikTok, if you're using TikTok, for Instagram. And if you can have it all in one tool, it's a huge time saving.
Yeah, it is it's quite amazing how it all works, right? So in my app, I have actually built that into the app itself. But I, for myself, for time saving purpose, I've got somehow I got connected early on to a company called Marblism. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but these are 6 AI bots: marketing, secretary, legal, HR. Literally, just like your day starts, I exercise in the morning, and the first thing I do is have my interaction with my AI team, and then they go to work, right? They do sourcing, they do. So going back to the growth thing, so growth as a leader, and I don't care if you work inside of a hospital as a manager or if you work as an entrepreneur in tech or banker, the rules are the same for everybody, right? So to work with great amount of clarity is critically important, and to really know and understand. So tell us, how can somebody use an AI tool to help get to the tip of the spear or what it is they need to accomplish or want to accomplish for 2026? Because on the end of the day, if you don't have a goal, it's very difficult to accomplish anything, right? So I love saving the time. I love setting yourself up for success. I love my email responses being prepped, sounding just like me, which is crazy enough with a Dutch accent if you have to think about it. But what can people do for that growth? I want to accomplish. I want to grow by 10%. How can they utilize tools to help them get to that particular point and fine tune what it is that the action steps that they need to take?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. And I think what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a strange answer, complicated answer. There are really 4 ways to grow a business, and I recently put that out in a book because I hear lots of people saying, "Oh, you need to sell more to current customers. Oh, you need to upscale. You need to sell them bigger contracts." Da da da. Da. Well, that falls into something called market penetration, and so there's these 4 different buckets that we can work in. Well, but they're missing other things that are right in that same concept of saying, well, how many customers are we selling to in our target market? Let's say there's 100 potential customers and we're only selling to 10. Well, maybe then instead of trying to sell more to current ones, maybe we go get those new customers that are just sitting there. Maybe we get some customers where they're not happy with the competition that they're currently buying from. So I decided that there were bits and pieces missing from just sort of the foundation, because sometimes we can jump into action and yet we only have part of the solution. And so, I think if people can look at these 4 different revenue strategies, it helps make it just clear. And then using AI, I actually haven't built this for any AI and I haven't seen it actually do it. But if you build a really good prompt and you're really, really clear on what it is that you want to do to grow your business, like if you said, hey, I want to grow my business 10%. What I would do is build a really good prompt and describe my target market, how I differentiate, how I'm positioning, all those basic fundamental things. Put all that into your AI and then ask it, what are some ideas that I can use to grow my business 10% this year, or whatever that number is, 20, 40, 50. We do a lot of times, we do some pretty big numbers. And just get crystal clear and look at what the AI gives you and I always say it's best to use AI for something you already know or are pretty familiar with, because then you can fact check it. So if it comes back to you and it says some things where you're like, that sounds really like that's not going to work. Maybe you say, give me 5 ideas. And then maybe you come back and you don't like those ideas. Well, maybe you then ask it, hey, give me 5 ideas that are a little more creative or unconventional or unheard of. And so that's one of the principles in prompting too, is to iterate, and you keep digging and digging and digging almost. And I always tell people, when you're dealing with AI, more is better. The old thing about less is more. Focus and narrow it down. When you're talking to AI, give it as much information as you can, because then you're going to have better results that more fit what you want. So I just say, take your phone and ramble on.
Yeah, the funny thing is you say that. I drive every week from New York City all the way up to the Adirondacks, about 3.5 hours. Half of that time is in dialogue. My conversation yesterday was about, I want to open up an RV rental center for adventurers in the Adirondacks. Tell me about it. We went for like an hour and a half building out a business plan to see if the ROI was there. So great information. You alluded to a book. As we're wrapping up the show today, where can people find you? Where can we learn more about the book and go from there?
Okay, well, thank you for asking. That's great. I've got 4 journals that are on Amazon, and anybody can go look me up. Books by Becky Amble, Beckyamble. I think it's right there on the screen. And they can find the books, and I've got 5, I think it is, on Amazon. I've written 6. One I just give away to military vets, and so it's not on Amazon. And then the book about the revenue strategy is called Grow or Die, Master the 4 Pillars of Profit. Because again, it's just, and the thing I like about that book is when I put it together, there's questions. So if you're in the first idea of market penetration, there will be questions that you can answer to figure out, does this make sense for me? Because sometimes we're not really sure. We need a little sounding board. So you can use the book, you can use AI as a sounding board. So people can find my books on Amazon. I recently launched another one that's a little outside my bailiwick, but there's a backstory to that one, and that is job loss grief book for people job hunting that are dealing with the stress and the grief and sort of all the emotional stuff that happens. Anyway, I'm also on LinkedIn. People can find me as Becky Amble on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel as well. So I think if they put my name in, they'll probably find it. I do a weekly AI tip on Wednesday morning. So if anybody's interested in that, they can just reach out to me or use my email, beckyfuturefocussai@gmail.com, and say, hey, I want to be on your AI tip list. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to put something out tomorrow because I thought, I think most people's brains are not going to be thinking about AI.
Well, yeah, listen, maybe there's an AI list you can generate on how to clean up after Christmas.
There
You
you
know,
go.
it is always a
Well,
way to go. Well, thank you, Becky, for being on the show today. Really, really appreciate it. And final parting thought.
Well, I love your example. I think that's just such a great way to use AI. That when you've got some time driving in the car, you and me working out in the morning, whatever it might be, get in there and you can use the two options. There's the dictation where you're actually just telling it to do something. And there's the other, the voice activation one where you can have a discussion going back and you can say, hey, I want to do strategic planning for a high-tech company, a SaaS company that does da 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 da. And then you can say, here's the key elements. What am I missing? And you can have this whole discussion. So I love that you're doing that because AI isn't perfect. It doesn't know everything. And we need to recognize that. Yet it can be such a great sounding board and such a great tool. Sometimes all we need to do is get those ideas out of our head.
100% correct. Trust but verify. That's, I think, the key thing to everything you just said. Again, thank you very much for being on the show. And to the audience, again, action-packed 21 minutes over here. Make sure you take action, right? Without taking actions, it's all null and void. Otherwise, by Monday morning, you have long forgotten everything that was said today. Go online to the Apple Store, find my app, The Dutch Mentor, all in one word. Download that. You have free 7-day access to that. And then a very inexpensive subscription service, risk-free after that, for only $49.99 per month, or less than your coffee habit. And of course, make sure you go find all of Becky's books, materials, and readings. Thank you again. We'll talk real soon again. Have a wonderful day, everybody.